Snow covered the city in quiet silver, blanketing the noise of traffic and time. The top floor of the tallest building stood dark except for one office, its corner window glowing against the cold December sky. Inside, Ethan Hale sat at his desk, staring at the untouched glass of wine beside the flickering fireplace. It was Christmas Eve again, and like every year before, he was the only one left in the tower. His staff had gone home hours ago, leaving behind soft laughter and the smell of coffee. Ethan had watched them leave, nodding politely as they wished him Merry Christmas, knowing none of them expected a reply. He didn't hate the holiday, he just didn't know what to do with it anymore. The tree in the corner stood too perfect, decorated by someone else's hands, glowing with quiet emptiness. He picked up the frame on his desk, a photo from 10 years ago. His parents, his younger brother, all smiling in front of the old family house before the fire. That night had taken everything from him except his name and the company he'd built afterward to fill the silence. Outside, snow kept falling. He almost didn't hear the first knock. It came again, louder this time. Ethan frowned. No one came to the office on Christmas Eve, and certainly not to his floor. He hesitated before crossing the room, his reflection following him in the glass. When he opened the door, a woman stood there, shivering under a faded red coat. Beside her, a little girl clutched a paper bag, cheeks pink from the cold. "I'm sorry," the woman said quickly. "We didn't mean to bother you." The shelter downstairs said this was the only floor still lit. "We just needed somewhere warm for a minute." Ethan blinked, unsure what to say. He'd seen her before, once, in the lobby cafe. She worked there, always polite, always moving fast, balancing trays and smiles. He stepped aside without thinking. "Come in." She hesitated. "We don't want to intrude." "You're already freezing," he said quietly. "Sit by the fire." The little girl's eyes lit up when she saw the Christmas tree. "Wow," she whispered. "It's like the one in the movies." Her mother smiled weakly. "We don't have one this year. Rent was more important." Ethan motioned to the couch. "You can rest here for a while." They settled in. The warmth filled the silence until the little girl reached into her paper bag. "We made cookies," she said proudly. "Mom said we should share them. Do you want one?" He froze. "You're offering me a cookie?" She nodded. "It's Christmas. No one should be alone." Her words hit him harder than she knew. He looked at the tiny hand holding a crooked sugar cookie shaped like a star. Slowly, he took it. "Thank you," he said softly. The mother smiled faintly. "She insists on giving them to everyone we meet." Ethan sat beside the fire, watching them thaw. Two strangers who had turned his empty office into something alive. The little girl laughed at the ornaments. The mother's shoulders relaxed, and for the first time in years, he felt the air shift inside that room. "Do you have family waiting?" he asked quietly. The woman shook her head. "Not anymore. Just her. We've been staying at the shelter since last month." Something inside him cracked at her calm honesty. "You shouldn't have to spend Christmas like that." She smiled sadly. "We've had worse. At least we have each other." The girl interrupted, holding another cookie toward him. "You can have another one. You look sad." He almost laughed. "Do I?" She nodded. "But it's okay. Mommy says sadness doesn't last forever if someone shares with you." He looked at the woman, whose eyes reflected both pride and pain. "You're raising her well." She shrugged. "I'm trying." He wanted to ask their names, their story, how they ended up here, but instead, he just said, "Wait here." He went to his desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out a small box he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a gold ornament shaped like an angel. He handed it to the girl. "This belonged to my mother. She said angels protect people who believe in good hearts." The girl gasped, her fingers trembling as she held it. "It's so pretty." Her mother's eyes widened. "We can't take that. It's just a decoration," he said. "But I think it's found a better home." The woman hesitated, then whispered, "Thank you." For the first time in a decade, Ethan smiled. Not the practiced one for meetings, but a real, quiet one. The little girl placed the angel gently at the top of the tree and clapped. "Now it's perfect," she said. Outside, snow kept falling, but inside, something warm had started to melt the years of cold that had lived in his chest. He looked at them sitting by the fire, the mother, her tired eyes still full of grace, and the little girl whose laughter filled every corner of that room, and realized he wasn't the only one who had lost something. And for the first time, he wondered what would happen if they stayed just a little longer. The warmth from the fire grew softer as the night deepened. Ethan poured the woman and her daughter each a cup of cocoa from the company kitchen and found himself smiling when the little girl tried to blow on the steam like she'd seen adults do. She sat cross-legged near the hearth, hair glowing like threads of gold under the tree lights. The woman watched her quietly, exhaustion flickering behind her calm eyes. Ethan leaned against the window, glancing out at the sleeping city below. "You said the shelter downstairs sent you up?" She nodded. "They ran out of space. We were walking to the next one when the snow started. The janitor said someone was still working up here, so we tried our luck." He gave a small laugh. "You knocked on the door of the most unlikely Santa." She smiled faintly. "Maybe the kind who needed to be found." For a moment they said nothing. The little girl had started humming to herself, rearranging ornaments at the bottom of the tree. Ethan felt something stir inside him that he hadn't felt in years, a strange peace that had nothing to do with success or wealth. When he asked their names, the woman said, "Claire, and that's my daughter, Emily." He repeated them under his breath, as if memorizing a secret. Claire noticed. "You really don't have to keep us," she said softly. "We'll go when the snow stops." "You'll stay until morning," he said without hesitation. "It's safer." She hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." As the clock ticked past midnight, Emily yawned. Claire spread her coat on the couch and tucked her in. Ethan watched them quietly, something fragile pressing in his chest. He hadn't realized how quiet his life had become until their voices filled it. Claire looked at him. "You don't go home for Christmas?" He shook his head. "Home burned down a long time ago." She didn't respond right away, just met his eyes with quiet understanding. "I'm sorry." He shrugged. Work became easier than memories. She smiled faintly. "You can't live and work forever. Even silence gets tired of being empty." Her words hit harder than he expected. He turned away, pretending to check the fire. "And you?" "We lost our home too," she said softly. "But I still tell Emily that every place we stop is just part of our story. Maybe the next one will be better." He looked at her then, really looked, and saw not just exhaustion but a kind of stubborn grace that refused to die. A while later, as snow drifted heavier against the glass, Emily stirred and opened her eyes. "Mommy, is Santa coming?" Claire brushed her hair. "He might. You should sleep." Ethan smiled faintly. "If he doesn't, I can make sure there's something here when you wake up." Emily grinned. "You'd be Santa?" "Something like that." She fell asleep with a smile. Claire whispered, "You don't have to do that." "I know," he said, "but maybe I want to." After she'd fallen asleep beside her daughter, Ethan stood in the quiet office, staring at the tree. Then he went to the storeroom, searching through boxes until he found an unused gift basket, one meant for clients. He filled it with anything that might make a difference: food, chocolate, a warm scarf, a company card loaded with funds he never used. When he was done, he sat by the window again, watching snow swirl over the city. Something about that night felt different, like the beginning of something he hadn't let himself hope for. When morning came, the first lights spilled through the glass. Claire woke first, saw the basket by the tree, and froze. "Did you?" He smiled quietly. "Santa must have stopped by after all." She blinked back tears. "You didn't have to." He nodded toward Emily still sleeping. "You said it yourself. Maybe the next place in your story should start with a little hope." Claire didn't answer, just looked at him like she wanted to speak, but couldn't. The words stayed between them, unspoken but real. And as the sun rose over the snow-covered city, Ethan realized that the loneliness he'd carried for years had finally cracked open, not from grand gestures or fortune, but from a knock on a door and two strangers who'd reminded him that warmth still existed. The sunlight melted through the tall windows, waking Ethan from a sleep he hadn't realized he'd fallen into. He was still sitting in his office chair, the fire now a quiet nest of embers. The faint sound of laughter reached him before he opened his eyes fully. When he turned, Claire and Emily were huddled by the window, watching the city sparkle under its blanket of snow. Emily turned first, her grin bright. "Look, Mr. Ethan, the cars look like toys." He smiled, surprised at how natural it felt to hear someone say his name in that room. "They do. The whole city looks smaller when it snows." Claire stood, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We should go before we overstay our welcome." He shook his head. "There's breakfast downstairs. Come with me." She hesitated, but Emily had already grabbed her hand. "Can we, Mommy? Please." Down in the cafe, the staff stared, whispering quietly. The usually untouchable CEO was walking with a woman in a torn red coat and a little girl in mismatched mittens. Ethan ignored the looks, ordered pancakes and hot chocolate for the three of them, and even helped Emily pour syrup without making a mess. It was such a small, ordinary moment, yet something about it felt new. When they were done, he turned to Claire. "Do you have anywhere else to go?" Her expression faltered. "There's a shelter uptown, but they're full most nights. We'll figure something out." "You shouldn't have to figure it out alone," he said quietly. "I can help you find something better." Her voice softened. "You've already done more than enough." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just tired of spending Christmas alone." Emily tugged his sleeve. "You can come to our Christmas next time. Mommy makes soup and sings songs." Claire blushed, trying to hush her, but Ethan laughed. "I'll hold you to that." They exchanged numbers before leaving, just in case he heard of a good place. He watched them disappear into the bright street, the sound of their laughter lingering long after they were gone. For the first time in years, his office didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a door had opened. Days turned into weeks. He sent a few messages, job leads, apartment listings, but Claire never asked for money. She just thanked him, politely, always adding a small update about Emily. How she loved drawing, how she missed the big Christmas tree, how she had kept the golden angels safe. Each message pulled him a little further out of the emptiness he'd lived in. By February, he visited the small diner where Claire had found work. It was crowded and noisy, nothing like his usual world, but when he saw her behind the counter, apron dusted with flour and eyes shining when she recognized him, it felt like the only place worth being. "Mr. Ethan," she said, smiling. "Did you really come all the way here for coffee?" He looked at her and said softly, "No. I came to see how the angel's doing." She laughed. "Emily will be thrilled." As the months passed, they began to see each other more often. Casual at first, then something deeper. He helped them find a small apartment. She helped him find a life beyond the glass walls of his office. Emily filled his weekends with drawings and questions, and somehow, the man who had once spent every Christmas alone found himself saving room at his table for 2 extra chairs. When December returned, the snow fell the same way as before, but everything else was different. The office tree was smaller now, decorated with paper stars Emily had made. Claire brought soup in a thermos, and they spent the evening by the fire again. This time not as strangers, but as something that felt like family. Ethan looked at them, the mother who had knocked on his door when the world was silent, and the little girl who had taught him how to believe again, and smiled. "You know," he said softly, "last Christmas, you gave me something I didn't know I needed." Emily tilted her head. "What's that?" He looked at them both. "Home." Snow began falling again that night, slower this time, drifting like quiet confetti against the city lights. Ethan watched from the window as Claire and Emily unpacked a small box wrapped in red paper. Emily set it on the table, eyes shining with mischief. "You can't open it yet," she warned, holding up one tiny finger. He smiled. "And why not?" "Because it's for tomorrow. You have to wait till morning. That's what Christmas magic is for." Claire laughed softly. "You'll have to listen to her rules. She takes holidays very seriously." "I can see that," he said, pretending to sigh. "All right, I'll wait." Claire poured him tea, her hands steady now, her eyes lighter than he'd ever seen. The weeks they'd spent together had changed her too. Less worry in her shoulders, more peace in her smile. She sat across from him, the warm lamplight catching on the thin silver bracelet around her wrist. It wasn't gold or diamond, but it suited her perfectly, like something chosen for meaning instead of cost. "You didn't have to invite us here again," she said quietly. "I wanted to," he replied. "Last year you gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever." She tilted her head. "What was that?" He met her gaze. "A reason to look forward to tomorrow." Her lips curved slowly. "That sounds like something a man says when he's found a family." He didn't answer right away, just looked at Emily now asleep on the couch, her head resting on a pillow, the golden angel ornament still clutched in her hand. "Maybe I have," he said softly. Outside, the wind pressed against the glass, but the fire kept the room warm. Claire leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment, and Ethan found himself memorizing everything. The way the shadows moved across her face, the way peace looked on her. When morning came, he woke to the smell of cinnamon and something sweet. Claire was in the kitchen, wearing his oversized shirt over her dress, humming quietly as she baked. Emily was sitting on the counter, dipping a spoon into the bowl of icing. "Good morning, Mr. Sleepy," Emily giggled. "You can open your present now." He rubbed his eyes. "Already?" Claire smiled over her shoulder. "She's been waiting since sunrise." Ethan sat at the table, and Emily placed the box in front of him with dramatic care. Inside, under tissue paper, was a photo frame. It wasn't fancy, just wood painted white, but the picture inside made his breath catch. It was the three of them sitting by the fire, the night they first met. Someone must have taken it with his office camera when he wasn't looking. Claire had printed it and written a small line under it in careful handwriting. "Sometimes, family knocks softly." He couldn't speak. He just stared at it, feeling something warm rise in his chest. Claire sat down beside him. "We thought you should have proof that miracles happen even when you stop believing in them." He swallowed hard, his voice rough. "You too are the miracle." Emily smiled. "Then can we stay forever?" He looked at her, then at Claire. "If that's what you want, there's nothing in this world I'd rather have." Claire reached for his hand, her touch gentle but sure. "You sure about that, Ethan? You're used to empty offices and quiet rooms." He smiled faintly. "I think I've had enough of both." Later, as the snow kept falling outside, they sat by the fire, the same way they had a year before. But this time, the silence between them wasn't lonely. It was full. Ethan leaned back, listening to Emily hum softly to herself, and for the first time in his life, Christmas didn't feel like a memory. It felt like a beginning. And somewhere deep inside, where loss used to live, he realized that sometimes the greatest gifts don't come wrapped in paper or ribbon. They come as two gentle knocks on a door when you least expect them, and they change everything. If this story made you smile, share it with someone who needs a reminder that accidents can turn into beautiful beginnings.